Hey guys, Jennifer Hobbs here, your host of Celebrate the Struggle, where I would like to make a safe space for people to come in and talk about real life, right? Real life struggle, trauma, and just what they've been through that's got them here to this point telling you this story so that maybe it'll enlighten you or even you can relate to it and know that there's some hope in the things you're going through. So with me today, I am grateful to have Air Force veteran Joey Brown. Joey, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here. So I'm going to have you go ahead and just start telling myself and the listeners a little bit about yourself. And I'm really excited about this because I had seen in your email that it said another average Joe, but I hadn't had the time to stalk you yet. So tell us all who you are, where you come from, and a little bit about how you got here.
Yeah, certainly. So yeah, my name is Joey. I'm an Air Force veteran. I was a Strike Eagle F-15 WISO weapon system officer. So that's the backseater, kind of in the two-seat version. It does air-to-air and air-to-ground. So I did that on active duty for 7 years, and then I got out in 2020. So prior to that, just kind of like short and sweet of the background and kind of why we're here. So I was born and raised in North Carolina, lived on my grandparents' farm, had my father pass away in 2001 from cancer, actually just a couple months before September 11th. And then that, for me, it's kind of like the reason that I joined was September 11th and just kind of being, around the people I was around and kind of the mentorship at the time was like, hey, I got this, like, I felt this calling to serve. And so that's kind of where it guided me into doing RTC and then going into the Air Force. And then, yeah, so on active duty, I did 2 deployments, 17, 18 was the first time. And then we actually got activated short notice in 2019, right before I got out, was over to go over there again, which we can get into later. But yeah, I did all that. I got out right in March of 2020, so right as like COVID's kicking in and everything shut down, and I ended up working for a really cool veteran-owned small business that's in the kind of defense acquisition world, and so that for me, I was able to keep that job and like do well. But I realized like it doesn't always work out that way, especially like with COVID and everything. I was like it kind of, I don't know, made me understand like, hey, it could have been very different. And so that's where the idea came for Another Average Joe. So I started a blog in September. I didn't really have I didn't have anything figured out. I kind of took the motto, and I think I've said this before on some other stuff, with if you ever watch Joe DeSena or listen to him about Spartan Race founder, he has a ready, fire, aim is a quote he's been using a lot recently. And so that was kind of my approach. Like I made the social media pages, I put it out there, said I was going to make a website, I bought the domain name, and it kind of forced me, right? I said, hey, whatever, September 28th, website launches and I'm starting a blog. And I hadn't even written the first post yet. So I did that. My idea was in the last couple months before I got out, I learned about all these different resources, nonprofits and everything to like help people that are going through the transition. And I didn't want to just like be another nonprofit. I think there's like, all these great small nonprofits that do a lot of stuff. And so instead of becoming another one, I wanted to try and like connect them more and bring people together, just like, identify existing resources. And so that's where it started. I've, over the last, not quite 2 years, year and a half or so, I've, connected with a bunch of different folks, and hopefully, the message is working and helping some people. But I realized that there's a lot of pages and companies out there that do a lot of good work with like I would call it the more technical aspects of career transition, like, interviewing, preparation, like like how do I get into an MBA program? How do I, go to college for the first time or whatever that is? And I realized like I can't be the the expert in all of those things. And so that was kind of the idea, was like connect these people. And so that's still kind of what I like to do with the blog, is like connect folks and bring more, kind of experience into one place. But I'm not a writer. So I realized that after a few months.
Or clearly you are.
Yeah.
You are a writer.
Well, yeah, I am a writer. I'm just
Mhm.
not something I like to do. Or it's not something I can push out a blog every couple weeks. So that's where in the last few months, this idea of starting a podcast came about. So I'm transitioning. Another Average Joe is still going to be, going on with the primary veteran focus. And then I'm launching a podcast on the 20th of December called Another Average Podcast, just kind of sticking with the theme there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the quick version of where I'm at today.
Yay! I didn't know about your upcoming podcast. That's awesome. And it's so crazy to look at. I got so much going on in my head right now. I need to slow it down and try and put these into words. I'll start with saying that is so honorable and crazy cool that like you have found that your purpose, your mission is like to help connect people with those kinds of things. And I feel like we have that in common. Like as I've stepped away from teaching after 12 years, I really want to help veterans and their families more, and eventually, hopefully, just people in general, And I realize like little me can't do that on my own, and so really, I want to best support like the families and like enlightening people about the resources out there, the things to plug into, even if it is a book, a podcast, or a retreat or a support group, anything. There's so much out there. And so I think that is really cool that I get to meet you and that is a mission that you are on. And it's crazy. The other thing I was going to say was it's crazy to think about how like as COVID started, how much that rocked all of our worlds. And I can't even imagine going from active military to COVID hitting, because again, like that rocked all of our worlds. It looked completely different to all of us. But I think about the transition from active military, even during a non-COVID time, how difficult that might be. And that you did it during COVID. And then here you are like getting inspired through and that goes to show like a lot of inspiration came out of COVID from Joey Brown and myself and a lot of other people. Okay, so that's super cool. Everyone, we're going to make sure we're going to put that in the show notes here because they'll be ready to listen to your podcast. Not Your Average Podcast.
Another Average Podcast.
Another Average Podcast, just like Another Average Joe, where they need to check out your blog. Okay, so back it up a little bit and tell us like what are some of the things and I'm kind of getting away from the questions here a little bit. What were like some of the defining moments where you realized that you needed to do something to change things? Like the struggle was hard. Was it a certain support system that you had in your life? Like I know losing my stepdad to cancer at 34 was so like harder than a combat zone and everything we went through there. So to lose your father at 10, that is huge. And was that about the time where, and I think I read this and what you had wrote me, like that was about the time where anxiety and all those types of things really started to press into your life?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, obviously, look back on it now, it almost feels surreal, right? And to like, be able to say like, yeah, it happened. And, you never really, I don't know, you don't get over it. It's not the right way to phrase it, right? But it's like, you're kind of, at peace with it, I guess is really the best way to kind of phrase that. I was super young. I was 10. So he passed away in June, I think it was. And then, so I was 10, almost 11. So then I turned 11, and then September 11th happened. So it was a lot, in those few months.
It's a lot to take in.
And yeah, I mean, I remember like, I think I was obviously, super vulnerable at the time, and I'm the older of the two siblings. So, I have a younger sister. And so I kind of felt like that responsibility, of kind of being I guess the one to like, I don't know, help
Be
kind of
strong.
shoulder some of it. Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of when you talked about, the anxiety and stuff, like that's what I had to end up working through. Right. Cause it's like, yeah, you can do that for a while, but you can't, I mean, you can't like take care of other people and do that if you're not also taking care of yourself. And when I was 11, I had no idea what that looked like. So I wasn't really doing that. I was just kind of like pushing that until a little bit later. And it wasn't really, I mean, thankfully our family kind of was like, hey, we were in, counseling and all that kind of stuff. And so it wasn't like we ignored, kind of ignored it and said, hey, it's going to be okay. Which I think, definitely helped out in the long run, kind of overcoming that, that trauma from there.
Yeah, I'm sure. I could see that. I could see why it would. So you kind of already mentioned it a little bit as far as like where you got the idea and like the motivation, the inspiration to start your blog and the podcast. So what do you hope for your podcast and like all the different ways that you would be able to reach someone? Like if you didn't have to sit there and focus on how to get there with like money and resources, what would be amazing for you to see that the ways that you could reach people?
So I would say, I'll kind of expound upon another average show a little bit, right? So the name's kind of dual purpose. My name is Joey, so I kind of play off that. And then I really didn't want it to be like about being in the Air Force only. I wanted it to be about, like all the different branches and all that kind of stuff, for all veterans. And so that's where like, another average show kind of came from. And it's a play. I've had someone a couple times now call me out on this, like, oh yeah, people that say that, they're average are usually not. And that's kind of the point, right? It's like, I've done some cool stuff, but I'm not like a special, like, I don't have superpowers or anything like that. And so that's kind of the point behind the name. And then, you did whatever you did when you were in. And for a lot of folks, it's like a highlight, like super awesome. His job in the military, and then they get out, whether it's, they separate or they retire, especially, with the people retiring. And it's like this terrifying moment of like, I was in this organization, I was like, did a cool job, or I was like really high up. And now like, it's like too much freedom, too many choices. Right. And so
like a lack of structure.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, it's terrifying because they're like, what do I do? You're like, I don't have anyone telling me what to do. Or, in some cases, like, if you were enlisted right out of high school, you were 17, 18, and someone's more or less told you what to do for 20 years of your life or more. And now it's like, what do I do? What do I want to do? And so that was kind of like those first few months, getting out, like, taking care of the primary stuff. And that was really where the idea came from. And so, the more I got into it, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, like the, interview prep and the technical aspects are important. I'm not gonna say they're not, but like, if your mental health isn't there, then like none of that stuff really matters. Yeah. So that's kind of where I see the brand like moving towards. And like, like you said, if money and logistics or whatever weren't, an issue, I would just encourage people to, like take their mental health seriously, because that stuff, and kind of, the reason I think with this podcast, but that's kind of where I've seen like the most, I don't know, I guess where there's the most need in the veteran community still. I know we do like a lot of talking about it and all this kind of stuff. And that could be its own episode. But like, I don't know if you've followed the Marine Rapper on Facebook or on Instagram or any of his social media. His real name is Raymond Lott. Really awesome dude. He's in a conservative rap group that does, like, they're called Space Force. But anyway, he was a Marine veteran. He's a Marine veteran, if I slow my words down. And the other two guys are Air Force veterans. and they produce some pretty awesome music. But for one of his like things he's always kind of done is on the 22nd they do like this Instagram live marathon where, you know, it's like his whole point behind it is like suicide awareness is not the issue, right? Everyone's aware that it's happening. And so like it's suicide prevention. You know, it's like having the real conversations and that kind of stuff. And so like for me, I've never, you know, like I've never gotten to that point where I had a suicide attempt or you know, anything like that. And so, you know, there's some level of understanding I don't have, I would, you know, say, but just with mental health in general, you know, that would be my goal, is to kind of help out with folks. And like, that's kind of the purpose behind the podcast a little bit too, is like, hey, like this self-improvement, that's what it's really focused on, right? Like, how do I make myself just a little bit better, or, you know, work on this area that I want to improve, just kind of incrementally every day, every week, so that I'm not getting to that point, you know, later, where it's like, hey, we're, you know, I'm in a really bad spot. So
yeah,
it's a long way to answer that question.
It's such a huge need though. So I love that that's where your drive and your passion is, because in my, again, it is just my opinion, but I think the facts are there that one of the biggest needs is like that transition, those transitions, and like just preparing them, like prevention, just like suicide prevention, doing things in advance to set them up for success, to where it's not such a foreign, all these things aren't, because it is a lot of like lack of structure with a lot of different expectations that have been set forth prior to that. And someone had said to me recently, a good suggestion when I was asking, like, well, anyways, the suggestion was to have a support system prior to deployment. And so this reminds me of like, it would be good to like start having prevention prior to deployment, prior to like even looking at transitioning out of the military, like prepping them for it, not just like right when it's happening. And so I feel like what you're doing is so needed and very cool. And I love that you have the, you know, you could think outside of the box to dream about how you could make that even bigger, like, well, taking it to the root of mental health, and then and whatever that might look like for you, it's going to happen. I mean, clearly you've already started a blog. It started as a blog, it started as a thought, and then it went to a blog, and then more conversations and connections with people, and then now it's going to be a podcast. And so you continue to tap into that purpose that's been put on your heart, because we have to continue to stay in touch, just like I want to do with all of my guests, because I want to be able to be a resource to other people, to show them like, hey, here's all these resources. And so clearly I didn't roll up on just an average Joe today. It's like the not so average Joe. So I love that you call it like another average Joe, and that's the story like behind it, like, because we all are totally different and have our own story. And so it's so, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but it's almost like not sarcastic, but it's like, yeah, just another average Joe over here, like, but a world changer. So it's like, don't let a book judge you by its cover. Am I making sense, or am I rambling on with the crazy thoughts in my head?
It is. Well, that's the point, right? Because I don't know, I flew fighter jets, and a lot of people, when they like, first thing they hear is that, and they're like, oh man, you know, like Top Gun, it's so cool, and you know, and it gets lost. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool, right? And we can talk about, like, I still love aviation and talking about that all day, but it's like, you know, that's not I don't know, it was, for me, it was like super awesome. And I learned so much, right? Like, it's a critical part of who I am today.
Sure.
But it's not like what I wanted the brand to be about.
Right.
So that was kind of why I separated the two and made the name the way it was.
Absolutely. Well, and really in my head, like, you're going to reach more people that way. Cause like, if you know, not everybody gets to wear those wings, you know, so it's not about that. It's just about being an average Joe. I love it. I love it. Okay. So here is my next question. Like, getting to talk to individuals like yourself on here, like being in touch with who you are and like your purpose in your life. Like clearly you don't just get there overnight, you get there with a lot of personal growth. So when it comes to like self-care and like the things you try to make sure, or at least strive to do maybe daily, weekly, because you know, like you thrive on that and like you benefit from it, what do you try to be consistent with? I try to ask everybody this on the call, and I want people to like hear different ideas because a lot of people aren't good with self-care and remembering to take care of yourself. And so I like to hear all the different everybody's feedback because I hope it'll encourage people to not just make self-care a priority, but you know, like you said, like you got like focusing on yourself, but to also maybe get an idea of like, oh yeah, that is a form of self-care. I could do that.
Yeah. It's gonna sound cliche because I don't know, it's probably a lot of people's top answer, but for me, it's like some kind of like fitness related thing. And with COVID, I really kind of saw it, right? So like, you know, worked out, plenty on active duty. And then when COVID first kicked off, we had actually bought Peloton, like
Oh, I'm
unrelated.
so
It was like,
jealous.
yeah. So we bought it like, I don't know, like November 2019. So like, early Christmas before all this stuff happened. So we already had it, because obviously there was like a lot of logistics issues and backlogs and people getting them. But I really just got into that and like, like for me, because there's all different ways of fitness and I'm not an expert or anything like that, but like just doing those challenging things, I guess is really it, right? Because like you don't have to have a fancy bike or whatever, right? But every week just doing that like tough workout, whatever it was for me, that was kind of the thing. It's like, for me, it was like doing the longer rides. So like I would try to do, which, it's all relative anyway. But for me, I would try to do like, they have the 90-minute rides, like that's the longest ride they offer on the bike. And so I try to do that a couple times a month with at least an hour ride every week. And so that really like, I kind of stopped that actually. And I'm getting back into it. So I kind of saw firsthand like how much it helped me versus how much I struggled and suffered, by not just physically, but like mentally and emotionally. Like if I can't take care of myself and just do something for me, at least once a week, then, that, I guess that's my little self-care thing is working out. So.
Right. And I mean, again, a couple things come to mind. Like you not feeling well and you like seeing that you benefit from it, like that is like data, right? Like exercise, whether it's cliche or not, like it really is like research proven to really like have chemical processes that happen that in the end up affecting your mental health. And so when you find yourself falling out of those, and for myself, like, or other people, like I have a devotion I read daily, and like, and if I get away from that and then I find myself, and that's just just these small things that we do benefit from when you remove them and you see that how it is affecting you. Like that reminds me of data. I'm kind of a data turd, so I would say that and bring that up randomly, but
I mean, like for my wife, she does like, and I bring this up because it's kind of in the same like mental health vein, but she's recently gotten a lot more open about her mental health as well. And so like, she does like meditation. She has the Calm app and she does like tapping and all that. Cause so if you've not heard of it, I'd encourage you to check it out. Like different things work for different people.
Yes.
And so she's kind of found like stuff that works for her. So there's another data point.
Absolutely. And I recently was enlightened that like meditation, looks completely different. There's all kinds of different, and that even sitting just out in nature and taking in all the nature around you is a form of meditation. So wanted to put that out there for people that just assume that meditation comes in the certain forms that you already are familiar with. Well, I'm glad that you're tapping into what you're inspired about has also inspired like your family around you, like your wife, although I'm sure she's inspired you in other ways as well. Joey, thanks for having us coming on here. And sharing all of that with us. I look forward to seeing the plethora of resources that come from you and another average Joe, and all the over the last 2-3 weeks as I've been having interviews with people to have a bank of podcasts to be ready to launch. These conversations have been incredible, and those connections, and everybody's just, three minds are better than one. And so I'd like to hear everybody's thoughts and their mission, like all the different resources we can tap into just by listening to people's stories. I'm excited for you on that note, because as you have your podcast, it's just going to be, it's going to light a fire, an ember that's going to burn like even brighter and more fully. And so that's exciting. So thanks for being on here. We will make sure we put everything in the show notes, your blog, your podcast, and how they can stalk you socially so they can keep up with you and another average Joe. Thanks for coming on today. And we look
Awesome.
forward
Thanks
to
so
seeing,
much.
we look forward to seeing and hearing more about your success. Again, like you mentioned earlier, we look forward to having you revisit us again and giving us an update on how things are going for you.
Yeah, awesome.
All right. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.